Welcome to Reddit Aliens. What's the most scary thing you've ever seen that you can't get out of your head? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe.
I found a dead body when I was a kid. I had seen dead people before, but it was like in funerals and stuff. Unsettling and weird, but not terrifying. They just looked like a wax doll version of themselves. But the dead homeless guy I found didn't look like that. It was the first time I felt mortal. The realization that people are just meat, that we all rot. It effed me up so bad. I was 11. I was never the same again after that. Oh boy, here we go. I used to work as a mine surveyor, working on an open cast gold mine, basically a big pit where you just dig out the material with bulldozers and diggers. Now this mine was in a pretty bad spot. Townships on both sides with a lot of gang violence, and we didn't have a fence around the mine property, small operation, so they didn't see a point in installing one. You kind of became desensitized to it at point. Usually, we had upwards of 100 people plus security working at the place, though, so it was quite safe during operation time. I went to do a survey on a Friday, as I normally do, but this Friday was special. It was pay weekend, and everyone else was given that Friday off to enjoy their hard-earned moolah. Being a surveyor, I wasn't given that day off since they still needed their figures calculated, so I was there alone. Not a single security officer in sight. I rocked up the mine, drove down into the pit, and got my equipment up and running. I was walking next to the high wall, side of the pit that slopes down to the bottom, when I smelled an intense coppery smell. It was overpowering. Like the dumbass I am, I decided to investigate and see what the hell this was. Now, sometimes when working with hard rock material, a portion of the high wall will fall off, creating a small cave the size of a person. We call them ice boxes. The smell was coming from one of these said ice boxes. I poked my head inside and found a man, cowering in the corner. I called out to him, but he didn't move a muscle. I felt my heart drop as I realized that he was definitely dead. Ran out and called the cops, then my boss. Later, I found out that one of the gangs in the area kidnapped this man and one of his friends from their home in the township, robbed them, and then drove them around for hours, beating the ever-loving shit out of them and SAing them. They dropped off the one guy in the middle of nowhere and took the other to our mine. They went down into the pit and forced him to crawl into that icebox and then shot him dead. It took about a week for the smell to disappear, but I can still see that man cowering in the corner. In 7th grade, we had to watch videos about parasites, and there was this guy that pulled a 5-foot tapeworm out of his ass. I'm scared for life. I'm so paranoid I have a parasite and don't know it. I heard there are some that enter your feet when you walk barefoot on grass, and I couldn't walk on the grass for like 5 years after that. One day, here at my dorms in college, I woke up in the early morning to hear screaming in the hallway. I go outside into the hallway, and there's a guy high on meth trying to kill himself. Thankfully, me and some other guys were there to help, but there was also a pursuit around campus in 10-degree weather to find him after he ran away. The guy is fine now, but the scene still haunts me, and I get anxiety now whenever I hear sounds in my hallway. I was helping a neighbor get hay bales off the field. He ran the baler, and I ran a tractor with hay forks to move the bales off to the side of the field. One trip out, I noticed him untangling the string in the back of the nailer, with it wide open. When I returned for more bales, the back was closed and I couldn't see my neighbor. Took the next bale to the edge of the field and back for more. Still his tractor sat in the same spot, engine still running. So I go out to see if he was having problems. There is a safety latch on the back of the baler to keep it open. This one had failed. My neighbor was lying, half on the ground outside the baler, half inside the baler, connected by a thin mush that used to be his abdomen.
Well, that could certainly qualify as one of the scariest things you can't get out of your head. Sorry you had to witness that.
My little brother was terminal cancer. It was coming to the end of things. I could kind of feel it was coming eventually, but I thought maybe a few months more, at least until Christmas of that year. One night, a few of his friends had just left after visiting. We had a lot of visitors over the course of him being in hospital, the diagnosis of cancer, the diagnosis that it was terminal. He was fine saying goodbye, a little tired, but that was normal since he was literally dying. He took a mixture of a stroke and a seizure in one go, literally, after they got into the parents' car. He was sitting in the bed we had provided and he tried to say something to me, but it was slurred like he'd been drinking all day. I freaked and called my parents because I had no idea what was going on. My dad said, "I think he's having a stroke." And that it was for me, I hit full panic. I'm ready to call an ambulance until I realized there's no point. He's dying. What are they going to do? His doctor came out the next morning and told us he thought my brother had about a week or two left. He died 3 days after that, but that night is stuck in my head. The other thing that won't leave is when the funeral home took his body away in a body bag. I screamed. I don't remember screaming, but my cousin does, because she said she's never heard anything like it before. Sorry. When I was 13 years old, I was headed to bed in my room where my brother also stayed. It was the middle of the night and I was still up. He had a tendency to sleep talk, but this night he was like chanting. I was freaking out just looking over at him. Then I glanced at the window near his bed and there was someone in the window staring at him and it looked like they were egging him on. Like hearing him and celebrating it, I leapt out of bed to the middle of the room and started going towards him, and then he stopped. I look over and there was no one outside the window, but the neighborhood street lamp adjacent to the street outside just bursted. A few years ago, tornadoes tore through this mountain area which is not prone to tornadoes. I remember getting up at 1 a.m., getting my wife and the dogs in a safe area of the house, and then checking outside just for awareness. I opened the back door and could hear the telltale train sound. Lightning flashed. I saw the funnel in the sky. That was pretty damn terrifying. It's pitch black, wind howling, rain coming in at all directions, and suddenly, this giant destroyer appears in the sky. It got louder, and then just dissipated. It was only an F1, but it managed to do some impressive damage. It never made it to our property line, but trees were down all over. Construction materials from a house they were building half a mile through the woods wound up sprawled all over our property and in the woods. I still find chunks of material from time to time. A friend of ours was not so lucky. His house and many others were destroyed by an F3 just a few miles away. He was in his house when a 36-inch wide tree crashed through the wall. My dad, me, and my stepbrothers built a shed in our backyard. Me and my brothers slept in it for a week. One night I got out to pee in the bushes. When I was also done, I saw a black, skinny figure crouched down with its skinny right arm on my fence like I stumbled onto it right before it jumped. That freaks me out to this day. Also, about a week ago at 2 a.m. I couldn't sleep because I was paranoid. I forgot to lock my car. I stepped outside, walked down the porch stairs, look up at my dad's van, and right as I looked, another skinny head turned right around my van like it was trying to hide. Needless to say, I was scared shitless. My brother can get very aggressive at times, but on this day, he took it to another level. He got home already in a bad mood while I was in my room listening to music. Apparently, that made him even more angry, so he took my laptop. When I went to his room to get it back, he snapped and attacked me, threw me to the ground and tried to choke me. But the thing I will never forget was the look in his eyes. They were so dark, filled with pure rage and the intention to hurt me, like an explosion that shocked me to my core. It scared and hurt me even more than his actions. I was 2 or 3. There was a celebration going on and a fire broke out. 65 people died and 150 were injured. I don't remember anything except me and my aunt in the hospital who was critical. I remember seeing my dad cry and everyone being sad. When she came home, I saw her charred face and still remember it. Possibly my infant brain made the memory scarier than it was. Uncle ended up spending about $500,000 on her treatment, selling away his property and all. She is 100% fine now, except maybe emotionally. A man getting cut in half after being ran over by an F1 car. You could see how the intestines were the only thing keeping his top and lower body from going opposite. The man was going white, a fire extinguisher to a crashed F1 car, and the extinguisher hit a driver in the head, making his brain into soup. I've seen a lot of terrible stuff, but the one that sticks with me is when my stepdad had a bottle broken over his face. The situation as a whole was chaotic and scary, but seeing his whole face and forehead split open and just start pouring blood, He was disoriented for a sec too, and started shaking his head like a dog, trying to figure out why his head was wet.
Seeing somebody get smashed in the face with a glass bottle is not a pretty thing. I've unfortunately seen that too, so sorry.
Paramedic here. Had a guy die from unknown causes in his house. Nobody had heard from him for a week until the neighbors noticed the dogs hadn't been outside in a while. Neighbors called the police for a welfare check. Police call us in case they find something we can help with. Cops kick in the door and find the guy laying on the couch half-eaten. 3 large Dobermans got hungry. I saw a woman driving a truck get T-boned by a semi at about 60 miles per hour and ejected from the vehicle. I got out and ran up to the wreckage, and her legs were facing the wrong way from her torso, and her entire body was starting to turn strange colors from what I assume was excessive internal bleeding. She was still sputtering a couple of breaths and twitching when I got up to her, but I very seriously doubt she was alive. At least I hope she wasn't.
Well, if she was still alive, at that point, most likely wasn't feeling anything. Sorry.
Well, this wasn't extremely scary, and I remember it out of nowhere, but this was too much of a coincidence. At a movie theater me and my friends went to is located in front of a river stream, and there were some stairs leading to it, so me and my friends were hanging out on said stairs. Out of nowhere, one of my friends talks about some bullshit he probably made up, and it went something like this. In this river, some guy fell into this part specifically, and he got swept away and died. After he said that, a guy coming right behind us stopped to talk to us, and he had his hand out. My friend was using his phone, and we thought the guy was about to snatch the phone, but instead, he wanted to shake my friend's hand. He introduced himself. We thought this was weird enough, but out of nowhere the guy said, "That part right there, that's where my friend died." When he told us that he immediately fell to his side and was just laying there. What's crazy is, there is no way he could have heard my friend talking about the story he made up as he was whispering it to us, and while he was telling the story, the guy was a good 30 feet away. We haven't talked about it since, as I hardly ever see them, and it's not something we ever brought up afterwards. I was recently hit head-on by a drunk driver at over 100 miles per hour combined. I remember everything up to the impact. I remember thinking, no, and then bam! I was out for a few seconds, and when I came to, I was very angry, like I knew someone had effed up. I can see the headlights and hear the engine and twisting metal and glass shattering. A couple of years ago, there was a shooting in my old house. My father and his 2 friends were in the living room, drinking, my brother playing Xbox, and my sister in her room doing her thing. I was in the bathroom when I heard the shots. I listened to everything and stayed paralyzed. When I left the bathroom, there was no one at home. I walked towards the living room and saw bloody footprints. I reached the entrance and saw a body lying on the corner of a covered by shadow. I walked over to it with my bare feet and went to my aunt's house. During 2 hours, I do not know if it was my father who had died. My father appeared later. Nothing had happened to him. The body belonged to one of his friends. To this day, I still remember going over the body as if it were a puddle. I had sleep paralysis a couple weeks ago. Never had one before. I had my eyes open and could move them. I was aware that I was awake, but could not move any other body part. As I looked down, the blanket started moving as if there was a snake under it. As the bulge of it up to my head, it vanished. I must have laid there for 5 minutes until I was able to move again. Up to that point, I didn't know what a sleep paralysis was. I'm 23 and I was shaking in fear. I was convinced something supernatural happens until I told a friend, and she informed me about the phenomenon. I was around 5 or 6 when this happened. I lived in South Africa at the time, and we were visiting my cousin, and we decided to ride the tram. Some drunk guy attempted to get on without paying, and my uncle shoved him off. When the tram driver saw what was going on, he pulled to a stop and got out of the tram with a broom. Drunk guy pulls out a knife. It was probably about 4 centimeters, maybe. Tram driver throws broom at drunk guy, and drunk guy runs off when a couple of us pulled out our phones to call the police and maybe an ambulance. We could have witnessed an effing stabbing.